When you drop a letter in a mailbox, you probably don't give a thought as to how it reaches its destination. Behind the delivery of your letter is the story of the Postal Transportation Service, often referred to as the backbone of the postal system. We hope that through this film, you will come to have a clearer understanding of the work postal transportation clerks perform and the skills required to keep the mail in motion. This is Bob Smith, future postal transportation clerk. 6 months ago, Bob took a civil service examination for employment in the Postal Transportation Service and achieved a high grade. He also passed a rigid physical examination. The letter he is reading is an offer of employment as substitute postal transportation clerk. Following the instructions in the letter, Bob reports to the district transportation manager's office. The district manager explains that the basic function of the Postal Transportation Service is to transport the United States mail, to keep the mail moving toward its destination. That this work is performed in terminals, airmail fields, moving highway post offices, and railway post office cars. Bob learns that life in the Postal Transportation Service is one of continuous study and fight against time to get the mail home as swiftly as possible. He is advised that the work is arduous and for the most part performed during the night, that he will have to travel and be away from home a good part of the time. He is also told of the many advantages of federal employment. Bob accepts the appointment and immediately takes an oath to defend and uphold the Constitution of the United States. He is given the equipment necessary to protect the mail, to identify himself as a Postal Transportation Service employee and a commission for travel. Bob is now a substitute postal transportation clerk ready to undertake a period of training. Bob's first session with the training officer acquaints him with the fact that postal transportation clerks must study as well as work. The training officer instructs Bob in the use of the books he will study to qualify for the examinations he will take throughout his career. The book of instructions, which contains the rules of employment. The scheme books, which list in great detail the routes serving each post office and the schedules of railroads, airlines, highway post offices, and truck routes. The geographical location of each office is studied, and the routes serving the offices are traced and checked through scheme books and schedules. This is the heart of the training program. Through this process, the correct routing for each post office is worked out so that the mail may be dispatched to reach its destination in the shortest possible time. The correct route is noted on the back of the card containing the post office. Clerks must memorize not only the names of 5,000 post offices, but the correct routes for each. The various types of equipment and their use is explained by the training officer, as well as the proper method of locking and labeling. Bob is also informed that within 30 days he will be required to pass 2 written examinations, and within 60 days he must pass an examination on approximately 800 post offices. Bob feels this task is impossible. He is told that all postal transportation clerks pass these examinations, and if he applies himself, he can do it too. Under the supervision of the examiner, Bob takes his first examination on postal laws and regulations. It consists of 50 questions. Bob studied hard for this examination and answered 48 correctly, receiving a mark of 96%. Throughout his career, he will be required to take written and case examinations every year. Every day of his working life, he will be learning new distribution and regulations, and there will be no rest from this continual process of accumulating knowledge. The first job to which Bob is assigned is in a Postal Transportation Service terminal. These terminals are usually located at railroad stations. The mail is loaded onto belts, which carry it to the first section for the primary breakdown in the process of distribution. These terminals are a maze of belts, chutes, corridors, elevators, and moving trucks. 70 terminals manned by more than 10,000 postal transportation clerks are located throughout the United States. These clerks keep the mail in motion from the time it is loaded onto the belts until it leaves the terminals properly dispatched via trains and trucks. In this terminal, located in Washington, D.C., 10,000 sacks of mail are processed daily. This job requires hundreds of highly skilled distributors who work around the clock, 365 days a year. As Bob has no knowledge of distribution, he can only perform the more laborious work in the terminal. This consists of pulling sacks from one truck to another and dumping up mail on a portable belt for distribution by experienced employees. It is a question of pull and lift and dump and dump. A tired substitute finally realizes that if he is to get away from this laborious work, he must learn something about the distribution and dispatch of mails. Like other postal transportation clerks, Bob spends countless hours studying the geographical locations and scheming out the correct route for each of the 800 post offices in his examination assignment. The following month, Bob takes his first case examination. He must know how to distribute and dispatch correctly mail for approximately 800 post offices. Postal transportation clerks must make a grade of at least 95 to pass. He presents his equipment, revolver, keys, scheme book, and schedule to the examiner who inspects them to see that they're in good condition and kept up to date. Every week, there are supply and schedule changes. Clerks must revise and restudy these supplies and routes to conform to these changes. Bob is naturally apprehensive. He gives the signal and begins casing the cards. Off to a slow start, he gains speed and finishes the examination at a rate of 32 cards a minute. The examiner checks the cards through the use of a code on the back. He finds 8 errors in Bob's examination and points out the correct supply for each office in error. Thus, Bob receives a mark of 99% on his first case examination. As he continues to take examinations, his confidence will grow. Within 3 years, he will have a working knowledge of approximately 5,000 post offices. Bob has now acquired considerable knowledge of distribution and is temporarily assigned to a terminal where bulk mails are handled. This is a simple distribution rack where sacks are made up for states and other postal transportation service terminals. Although Bob is working alone on his rack, he is part of a vast team where the performance of each individual affects every other individual in the organization. The process of distribution is like an endless belt. A jam up at any one point can cause serious problems throughout the entire organization. As the sacks are filled, they are labeled, tied out, and dispatched to the correct train for transportation to destination. Sacks of parcel post are dumped up on a portable belt where clerks, working at high speed, make the primary breakdown for the various racks in the section. Parcels of all sizes and shapes are thrown into tubs which go to the racks for distribution. It is easy to see the wisdom of the Post Office Department in cautioning its patrons to wrap parcels firmly and securely. During an 8-hour day, Bob processes the equivalent of 160 sacks of parcel post for the states and terminals contained in his distribution. The tubs from the portable belt are brought to him along with a word of encouragement and advice. When the mail is kept in motion, this vast terminal is a smooth and efficient operation. However, the flow of mail varies, and the distributors are contending against time to keep the mail moving. When the volume becomes too great and overtaxes the facilities of the terminal, it results in delays and increased costs. The most economical and expeditious method of handling bulk mails is to keep them in motion. That is the job these people are trying to do. 12 billion pieces of third and fourth class mail are distributed and transported each year. To perform this tremendous task requires expert knowledge and close teamwork by postal transportation clerks. The transportation of mail by air is one of the responsibilities of the Bureau of Transportation. Airmail fields are located at principal airports throughout the country. Airmail is preferred service. It costs more, but if desired is well worth the money. It is possible to mail an airmail letter in New York City and have it delivered in London, England, as quickly as a letter at the regular rate mailed in New York is delivered in Chicago. Incoming air mail is delivered to the Postal Transportation Service by the airlines. Two important tools a postal transportation clerk uses are the twine cutter and the thumb stall. The twine cutter is used to cut open and tie out packages, and the thumb stall is to put the letters into pigeonholes. Bob now has sufficient knowledge to work airmail into a complex distribution case. The jargon used in the Postal Transportation Service is peculiar. For example, Phil and North, number 1 and 2, means mail in these pigeonholes will be dispatched to a railway post office train running between Philadelphia and Norfolk. The number 1 package is to be worked first because it includes cities near the beginning of the run, while the number 2 package contains mail for cities near the end of the run. Bob receives on-the-job training under the guidance of regular clerks. Here he is being shown the correct way to tie up a package of letters. He still hasn't learned how to hold on to a package with one hand while tying with the other, much to the amusement of his co-workers. It is embarrassing to have to pick up the letters under the eyes of 50 fellow employees, but it will not happen too frequently because Bob is determined to learn how to tie out properly as quickly as possible. After the air mail has been distributed into the cases, the packages are tied out and sent to the pouch table, where they are thrown into pouches of destination. Life at an airmail field is never static. Flight patterns are constantly changing, which sometimes makes it necessary to use alternate routes in expediting airmail. Planes are grounded, and mail must be routed to trains and trucks. The airmail clerk must not only know the proper supply and dispatch for fusion and dispatch for surface transportation as well. This complex system of routing requires specialized skill and flexibility, which is peculiar to the industry. Airmail field clerks distribute mail not only for domestic delivery, but also for many foreign countries. Many of these men are experts on foreign distribution. Here again, the clerks work around the clock and against time to distribute and dispatch as much mail as possible on each flight. 800,000 authorized airmail flights serving 550 cities carry 1.5 billion pieces of airmail yearly. The Post Office Department's latest innovation in transporting mail is the highway post office. With more and more people leaving the cities to live in suburban areas, the highway post office is becoming an increasingly important media in mail transportation. Highway post offices not only transport mail, but also provide facilities for distribution en route. Clerks are assigned to highway post offices and railway post offices and carry firearms to protect the mail. One of the great advantages of this service is that it delivers the mail direct to post offices along the run. Highway post offices are not restricted by the rigid schedules of railroads and airlines. Routes can be set up to meet the individual requirements of the post offices served. The direct exchange of mails is not only expeditious, it is also economical, as it eliminates the need for motor vehicle and star route service. The flexibility of the hypo is the answer to the serious problem of providing good postal service during periods of shifting populations. As new communities are established, highway post office routes can be revised, or new routes established and obsolete routes discontinued. Each year, more highway post office routes are added to meet the needs of suburban areas. At present, there are 140 highway post office routes which travel 15.5 million miles yearly. The American people are on the move, and the highway post office is moving with them. This is Bob's first trip in a railway post office. At the railroad station, he meets the crew he will work with, and they report to the RPO car to perform advance distribution before the train leaves. This railway post office runs between Washington and Chicago. The empty car is hung with pouches and sacks according to an official diagram which accommodates the mail to be distributed and dispatched during the run. Each rack contains from 10 to 16 pouches or sacks. Each RPO car has a different layout because the scope of distribution varies for each run. Letter case headers are inserted in the pigeonholes for the city and state mail, which will be distributed and dispatched. Most postal transportation clerks work throughout the night so that mail will reach post offices early in the morning to ensure first delivery by letter carriers. Outside the car, there seems to be confusion as trucks of mail to be loaded or maneuvered into position, but actually everything is in order. A clerk calls out pouches in a jargon familiar only to the postal transportation clerks. Each run is scheduled to receive specific dispatches from post offices, airmail fields, highway post offices, and other railway post offices. A record is made of all pouches received and dispatched. As the time of departure nears, more and more mail is taken into the car, and the speed of distribution is stepped up. The conductor gives the highball, and the run begins. The pouches and sacks in the car contain first-class letters and newspapers. Nearly 18 billion pieces of first-class and 6 billion pieces of second-class mail are handled by the Postal Transportation Service yearly. As the momentum of the train increases, letters are snapped into the pigeonholes with increased speed. The pouch table becomes the center of activity. Letter packages are thrown into the correct pouches. There is esprit de corps in the Postal Transportation Service that is unique. Postal transportation clerks work in small groups or crews. They develop a high sense of teamwork, and there is competition between crews, which results in high productivity. At the other end of the car, our substitute, Bob Smith, is distributing newspapers. He flubs and hits his head on the hooks underneath the boxes. When he does this about 100 times, he will be a real postal transportation clerk. The speed of distribution now has reached its peak and will continue at this pace until the train nears the end of the run. They will pick up and dispatch mail all along the way. Here's where postal transportation clerks use their tremendous knowledge of distribution. Each clerk understudies one or more assignments and can step in and fill a vacancy at a moment's notice. When one clerk is current with his distribution, he steps in and helps those who are behind. Each of these veteran clerks knows the proper distribution and dispatch for approximately 5,000 post offices and unhesitatingly flip the letters into the correct separation. Clerks work not only against time, they also work against the sway and bounce of the speeding RPO car. One of the advantages of railway post office service is that it permits receipt and dispatch of mail en route while the train is moving. This provides good postal service for the smaller cities and towns along the run. There are several offices along this route where mail must be dispatched on the fly. These are the most exciting moments of the run, particularly for our substitute, Bob Smith. The mail for dispatch is taken from an overhead box and enclosed in a special pouch. It is securely locked and brought to the door where the clerk will make the throw and catch. Clerks can easily tell at what point of the run they are by the feel of the car beneath their feet. The clerk designated to make the throw and catch is on the lookout for familiar landmarks as the train approaches the point where the mails are exchanged. The clerk goes to the door and looks for the crane upon which the incoming pouch is held. He throws the pouch, lifts the catcher arm, and there is the incoming pouch. The mail is brought to the pouch table and distributed swiftly so that the patrons at the next station may receive same-day delivery. Our substitute, Bob Smith, has now satisfactorily completed his probationary year. He has been educated by the training officer and his fellow clerks in the rudiments of the job of keeping the mail in motion. A letter from his district manager offers him an assignment as a regular clerk in a Postal Transportation Service terminal. He is now ready to take his place among those who have dedicated their lives to the principle that the mail must go through. With their great technical knowledge and resourcefulness, it may truly be said that neither snow nor rain, nor heat nor gloom of night stays these couriers from the swift completion of their appointed rounds.